Is it 6:30? I'm not very good. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you very much for coming out on this rainy, cold evening. I want to thank Sandy in the back for helping with this microphone. I'm not very good with wires and technology, and Sandy just plugged this in and it works. And so I'm really grateful. Also grateful to Hannah for scheduling this, having me here, and just thank Hannah when you see her. So I'm Robert Buxton. I've been here before. I do classical piano. I'll do maybe a little gospel at the end, improvisations. And I'm a talker too, maybe too much of one at times. I was thinking just now, I was talking to these folks over here about this weather and music. What does it have to do with it? So there's a wonderful pianist whose name was Shura Cherkassky. He was from Odessa. He was actually Ukrainian, come to think of it. And one of the best pianists. And he lived most of his life in London. And he said it was a strategic choice because the weather is so bad in London, he said, that it forced him to practice a lot. If he lived in Greece or Italy or somewhere, he would never practice because the weather is so good all the time. So at any rate, London's a great place, but the weather. So I was debating whether to play this. So I'm playing some new pieces that I've never played here before and some that I've played before. I was telling you, I wish I could learn faster, but I'm not. My teacher would call the pianists, musicians who can learn a whole new program in like a week or two, he called them Costco pianists. It's nothing against Costco, but bulk, learning in bulk. So at any rate, I was debating whether I'd play this again, but I will because it's March 1st is the birthday of Frédéric Chopin, so I might as well start with the Nocturne by Chopin in C-sharp minor. This is an early work of his, and he wrote it as a study piece for the second concerto. It has some of the same themes in it. And even at such an early age, he's Chopin. He was one of those composers. Not all were like that. Some took a long time to find their voice, like Brahms took so many years to write his first symphony, but Chopin, he was born as Chopin. And two ingredients I hear. One is Polish folk music. And another is Italian bel canto opera, which he loved very much. I mean, look, the left hand is like an orchestral accompaniment. And then my right hand is like the singer, the prima donna. Etc. So there's another history of this piece. For any piece I play, it's not only the composition's history, but also the recording history. And this is a piece many have recorded, probably most notably a Polish pianist, a Polish Jewish pianist named Władysław Szpilman, who survived the Holocaust. And there's a film about him from 20 or so years ago called The Pianist by Roman Polanski. He played this nocturne. And there's YouTube video of the actual Spielmann, not the actor who played him, but the real guy playing this nocturne, and it's just incredible. So, but unfortunately, you're stuck with me tonight, but instead. But here is the C-sharp minor nocturne of Chopin. play a waltz by Tchaikovsky called Valse Sentimentale, Sentimental Waltz. Another note is I'm coming to the conclusion now of this theme I've been doing of violin music. Talked about it last time, that I just love the great violinists of the past, like Heifetz, Milstein, Menuhin, etc. And I've been playing pieces that are either arrangements of violin pieces or piano pieces that are often played on the violin, like that Nocturne. There's a Nathan Milstein arranged it for violin, and this waltz is the same story. It's originally for piano, but there's a violin version of it. But I'm stuck with what to do next, and I'm slowly going to move into vocal arrangements. Liszt did a number of them. So I have some of those tonight, like songs my mother taught me by Dvorak. That's violinists play it, but it's originally a song, so can seamlessly transition to that new theme. At any rate, this waltz by Tchaikovsky, it's like the Chopin in the sense that it captivates two opposing feelings, sadness and joy, but in a way that language can't maybe. Behind it all, I think, is ballet, because Tchaikovsky was a great ballet composer, and I think that feeling of dance, it's a waltz, of course, the feeling of dance is always there. Tchaikovsky was obviously Russian, but what's interesting is that he was considered by his peers, considered him not very Russian, or not Russian enough, whatever that means. If you were Glinka or Mussorgsky, they used Russian folk music maybe a bit more as their inspiration, maybe more than Tchaikovsky did. But at any rate, music doesn't really have a nationality. So here is the Sentimental Waltz by Tchaikovsky. Another short, somewhat mellow piece. I have some more wild music coming up too. This is a piece by a composer named Maria von Paradis, and it's called Sicilienne, which is a type of dance that was popular in the 18th century. A couple things about this. Well, first of all, it's not really by Maria von Paradis. It's a musical forgery. You have those in painting too. It's actually by a guy named Samuel Dushkin, who was a violinist, and he said it was by von Paradis, but he wrote it. And Fritz Kreisler, who lived at the same time, did things like that as well. And the motive behind it was that, well, if I tell you, here's a piece by Vivaldi that I found in a vault somewhere, you're probably going to take it more seriously than if I said, well, here's something I wrote. So at least that's what they believed from what I read. That this was common. They would pretend it was by somebody, but it was their piece. A Sicilienne, though, it's a dance that goes, well, the rhythm of a Sicilienne is, it's a dotted rhythm. It's a long, short, long, you know. Bum, ba, bum, bum. And there's so many famous Sicilians. It's there's Mozart, you know, Sonata in A major. There's a Schubert, you know. There's everything, but maybe the most famous one is. That's a Sicilian. And this dance was associated with nostalgia. Rousseau wrote about it. He said that these Swiss traveling mercenaries would sing Sicilians or play them on horns, and it was just, it was their homesickness, is what it was. So here is this piece. And one more thing that I learned it because there's this violinist, he died a few years ago, Ivry Gitlis, big hero for me. He was an incredible violinist and personality. I even wrote him a letter. And he lived to be 98 and played violin until his last years. And in his last years, he played this a lot on the violin. It's just so special how he plays. I'm thinking about him when I play this. Now here's a piece originally for solo violin, arranged for piano. It's called Gavotte. It's from the third partita by Bach. and it's gavotte in the form of a rondo. So it's a Baroque dance, French dance. And it's arranged by Sergei Rachmaninoff, so we can call it, some people call this Bachmaninoff because the two composers mixed their names. What I say about this is, so Bach was quite religious. He was a church musician, church organist. I know we have some organists here, so, but at the same time, so why is he writing these secular dances, you know? There's some scholar I read somewhere, they said that he may have, it's a theory, it's not proven, but he may have had in mind biblical scenes for each of these dances. It's something interesting to think about. In any case, you've probably heard the original solo violin version, but Rachmaninoff, you know, he adds a lot of Rachmaninoff to it, and by the end it sounds quite Russian. It sounds like bells, Moscow bells, you know. So here it is, Bachmaninoff, Gavotte. Now we move to, I'm getting to the end of doing this cycle of Paganini Liszt etudes. I've done a few of these here before, the first several. These are getting towards the end. I'm not quite done with the last one, the famous 24th. But maybe next time, a little sequel. But at any rate, I'm going to play two. The first one is called La Chasse, which means the hunt. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Paganini and Liszt first. If I said all these things last time, forgive me, but Paganini, you know, he was sui generis. He was not coming really from any tradition musically. He was, you know, how would I put it? He was like a rock star of his time, and he was a wild man and very controversial. There was a group of people who believed that he was possessed. The way he played, even the way he looked, he was very striking. And he was a big inspiration for the Romantics, because look at how many Romantic composers, obviously Liszt arranged his music, but also Rachmaninoff, Brahms, even Lutoslawski in the 20th century. He was like this, Ivry Gitlis said he was like the Big Bang in music, because it's like music really changed after him. And maybe this needs to be talked about more, I think, how Paganini really changed music. Now the story with Liszt was a bit younger than Paganini. Paganini lived in the late 18th century, early 19th century. Liszt, born in 1811, he heard Paganini perform in Paris. And this was at a low point in Liszt's life. And the story goes that he heard Paganini and was so electrified that he just locked himself up to practice for a few years and emerged as Franz Liszt, the one that we remember. And it was these arrangements, it was one of the first things he did during that period, was arrange Paganini for the piano to translate that virtuosity, from the violin to the piano. So, La Chasse means the hunt or the chase. So, that is the sound of hunting horn calls. In those days, that's what they used for hunting. It's not like you could walk into a Walmart and buy a duck whistle or something, so they had to use something. Now, I don't know anything about hunting. I grew up in northern New Jersey, northeast, near the city, so I have since, lost my accent, but I think. But I was playing this somewhere, and a gentleman came up to me, and he had this southern, he said, I hunt, and I'm from South Carolina, and I couldn't quite do it. And he said that he envisioned this whole story here of a hunt, It was very vivid. I said I might steal it from you. So, and I asked him about, what do they use, horns? Do they repel animals? Do they attract animals? He said that they use certain types of horns today in hunting. I didn't know that, so apparently things don't change all that much. Anyway, so this piece is originally for a solo violin, and of course Liszt alters it to be a piano piece, adding these notes, down here. The violin doesn't go downstairs, so, all right. translating or emulating violin technique into the piano. Some of those, I don't know, crunchy things in the high register. You know, that's a very violinistic thing. And this piece, next one, is probably even more so. I think I've done this here before, you might remember it. This is the first of the 24 caprices called the arpeggio. And that's pretty much what it is, up and down arpeggios. And it's also almost no different from the original violin piece. Very close. And when I learned it, it felt like an exercise to me. You know, I didn't get it. Of course it's not, but you know. So I played it for my wife, who's a pianist also. And she's not a terribly huge fan of Paganini, but that's another story. And she said, oh yeah, I imagine something very clear. I imagine our kitten, because I tell people we have 4 kids. We have 2 cats and 2 kids. That's, if you have cats, you know. And we have this kitten who's very crazy. It's as if he drinks coffee all the time. He doesn't, but you know, he acts like it. And we have this toy, it's like a merry-go-round. It's a ball that goes around and he just whacks it all the time. And it's like this piece because it just goes up and down. And you know, on the violin, it's a ricochet or bouncing bow technique, you know, like that. On the piano, you have to do something like this. And it looks like a cat, you know, swatting at something. And I think part of the key to Paganini's music is actually a sort of sarcastic humor. That last one had it, and I think this too. So maybe he would approve of the comparison with a cat, because cats are the masters of sarcastic humor. Now I'm going to play a song arrangement. This is the songs my mother taught me by Dvorak, arranged for piano by a Russian composer named Eduard Schutt. It's a German name. My guess is he was a Volga German. There were, you know, Sviatoslav Richter was also like that. So this is a rather free arrangement. It's almost like an improvisation on the melody, but parts of it do sound like the original. You'll hear the tune. It's famous. So this is from his Gypsy songs, which is apt because, you know, Dvorak was Czech, and the music he loved perhaps most was Gypsy music, which is it's the folk music of that area. Central and Eastern Europe. And with his love of folk music, he came to this country, spent considerable time in the US, and absorbed a lot of our folk music, spirituals, Native American tunes and things. So listen to the New World Symphony or the American String Quartet. It has all of that. So the words to this song, if I were going to sing, which I don't do very well at all, I was listening to an English version of this, which was very interesting. Paul Robeson singing it. And the words they begin something like this: I recall the songs that my mother taught me, and now I teach them to my children. So it's a really beautiful, idea. So here is the piece, the arrangement. Does anyone have the time? But I've been taking my watch, but I forgot it because I tend to go too long. Does anyone have the by any chance?
7:38.
Oh, okay. All right. It's
6:38.
okay. We'll just pretend, right? Central time, right? We're on Central time. I have this funny story about that. When I was, I went to Texas to study in grad school with a wonderful Russian pianist, Vladimir Viardo. And my dad took me. I grew up in New Jersey, and luckily now my parents are in Chapel Hill and everyone's close again. But at that time we went on this road trip with my dad, and at the end, this is all going to make sense when I play some gospel, because he's from the South. He always said, "Why don't you play any real music? The classical's great, but what about, Hank Williams Sr.?" So we stopped in Nashville, and we got up very early in the morning to go to the Ryman. It's a Grand Ole Opry Museum or something, and he was in such a rush, and he just wanted to. He'd never been, and I don't like mornings, so it was just. And we get there, and it's empty, and the door was open, and there's this nice lady sitting there, and my dad said, "When's the tour? I thought we're like 1 minute late." He said, "I don't know where y'all are from, but it's 8 a.m." So it was the time change that mixed us up. So at any rate, so we'll pretend it's Central Time. Maybe I'll do one more Dvorak piece. I think I've done this here. That one I didn't. It's kind of new. This is the famous Humoresque in G flat, which is originally a piano piece, oddly enough, but you hardly ever hear it on the piano. Well, you're going to hear it now, but you usually hear it on violin or cello or anything but piano. Humoresque means humor, obviously, but it's more than that. This piece has sections that have humor. I mean, this opening to me sounds like even slightly tipsy. It's like, I think somebody put some lyrics to it slightly off color. I don't even know them. So Tom Lehrer or something. But anyway, there's other parts of this piece that are quite sad. They're quite heartfelt, like this. So I think of Charlie Chaplin, he could make you laugh, but he could also make you cry. Great comedians can do that, and great composers like Dvorak can do that too. So here is the Humoresque in G flat. think I was going to play something after Liszt and I forgot. I'll do it. It's a very, very short, famous A-flat major waltz by Brahms. Was also a gloriously bearded 19th century gentleman like Dvorak. And a story about Brahms is, well, I was going to play him after the Liszt because Liszt and Brahms absolutely hated each other. And there's a story behind that, you know, Liszt and Paganini were many things. Liszt was a great man, actually. He was not, Paganini maybe was not such a great person. But anyway, but neither of them, they were both not humble people. That's for sure. Liszt would go to royalty after his concerts and give them his hand to kiss. So the young Brahms went around Europe and met the great composers. He met Liszt in Weimar, and Liszt proceeded to sit this young man down and played him the entire B minor sonata, which is genius, but it's very long. And Brahms fell asleep. So you can imagine after that they were not really, and they stood for different things. You know, Liszt was always looking forward. He was he was pushing the boundaries of music with harmony and innovations. His late music is almost 12-tone. Brahms was the opposite. He was looking back. He loved Renaissance music, Bach, you know, Chopin even. He had a huge library of old scores. He would study them. And his temperament was different. You know, he was, I don't want to be People magazine here, but he was probably very much in love with Clara Schumann, the widow of Robert Schumann, herself a great pianist and composer. And they had a big age difference, and they wrote letters to each other. And again, it's speculation, but whatever it was, they were very fond of each other. And I think that connection is in the music somehow. Can't prove it, but it's there. I mean, I think Brahms was like this. Maybe you know someone like this who is very formal even, or placid on the surface, but underneath volcanic in their emotion. I think that's Brahms, and I think that's this piece, even though it's 1 minute. So. Here's a somewhat longer, this is a very crazy, tricky piece. So perhaps I'll play it and we'll try to survive it, and then I'll talk about it. This is called Liebesfreude, Love's Joys, by Fritz Kreisler. It's a violin piece, and it's arranged by Rachmaninoff. And I've played before here, I've played the Liebeslied, Love's Sorrows, which goes like this. But this is the companion piece to it, the Love's Joys, kind of a new piece for me. So, kind of freaks me out a little bit. But anyway, it's scary to play. They were big friends, Chrysler and Rachmaninoff, and I'll talk about them after. There's a few stories I'd like to share about them. But essentially, to start with, it's a Viennese waltz, and a Viennese waltz is not your regular, well, Brahms lived in Vienna, but he was from Hamburg. The waltz you just heard is more of a straightforward waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But a Viennese waltz has a little bit of a hiccup in it, you know, like that, you know, so. It has a lilt to it, you know, it's different. And this piece, I think, well, it's very much changed by Rachmaninoff. I mean, he really, even more than the Bach-Maninoff I did. Rachmaninoff just turns it into a fantasia on the melody. So it evokes a world, specifically Vienna before the First World War. Not that that was a perfect place, nowhere is, but it had something that is lost. A mood, maybe. Gemütlichkeit is a German word. It means coziness, and maybe that's what it is. But at any rate, that's this piece. It's full of this bittersweetness, and both Chrysler and Rachmaninoff were exiles from their countries. Chrysler escaped anti-Semitism in Austria, came to the US, and Rachmaninoff escaped the Russian Revolution, came here. And they were friends, and they were quite different. I'll tell you about it after. Let's try to play this. Okay. So. It's the stuff of nightmares to play. So, but here are the stories. First of all, and if I've told it here before, sorry, but they're good stories. One is that my grandfather met Rachmaninoff in Richmond, Virginia in the 30s. I'll tell it quick because I've told it before. Every time I play Rachmaninoff, I tell this story. So, and I tell people that Rachmaninoff spoke to my grandfather. It's true. He was told, as he was an usher at this concert, and was told not to let anyone go through this door. Well, someone tried to open the door, so my grandfather pushed back, and there was a little fight, and wham, the door was kicked open, and it was Rachmaninoff himself. And just a little background, Rachmaninoff was 6.5 feet tall. He was Russian, never smiled, had a shaved head. Someone said he looked like an escaped convict. And he spoke to my grandfather. You know what he said? He looked at him and he said, "Get out of my way." So I have this personal connection with the composer. Now, Rachmaninoff and Kreisler, they couldn't be more different, maybe. Kreisler was this kind of thin guy with a mustache and always smiling. Very, a wonderful person, wonderful soul. He would go to concerts and he would say, "I'm not performing, I'm just going to see my friends." I love that. It's a great quote. But he hated to practice, never did. Maybe he didn't need to. Listen to Kreisler's recordings. You want to feel warmth in your heart, listen to Kreisler. It's one of my favorites. He would sit in Central Park and just look at the trees and talk to people. He was almost like a childlike, you know. So they were, Rachmaninoff and Kreisler were giving a recital together in Carnegie Hall. It's a true story. And Kreisler got lost in the piece. That's why I tell this after I play it, because, so that is so difficult. Now, he got lost, and Rachmaninoff's at the piano still playing. Rachmaninoff, you know, we don't have videos of him performing, but we have descriptions that he was almost like Horowitz. He just sat like a stone, you know, and he was playing, and Kreisler walks over to him and mutters, "Where are we?" And Rachmaninoff, without flinching, he just says, "Carnegie Hall." Didn't help much, did it? I'd like to conclude the classical part today with a couple Spanish-themed pieces. They're both originally piano works, but they've been adapted for violin and cello and others. So the first is a short Malagueña by Albéniz. There's a more famous one by Cuban composer Lecuona, but that's another story. Albéniz was, oddly enough, he was Catalan. He was not from, you know, the center of Spain or the south of Spain, but nevertheless, flamenco music was his big inspiration. And Malagueña means woman from Malaga, and Malaga is a city in the south of Spain. It's a capital of flamenco music. So, I'll remove the mic for this. What you hear is what sounds like flamenco guitar, and perhaps a vocal part in there, in the left hand. So doesn't it also sound a little bit Arabic, or Middle Eastern, you might say? And there's a reason for that. I might use the mic. Spanish history. What was Spain in the Middle Ages? It was Moorish. And so there's that influence. You know, flamenco music is heavily influenced by Arabic music and culture, you know, the food of Spain and the architecture. It's a melting pot. So here is the first, the Malagueña, or Malagueña, I don't know how to say it, I don't speak Spanish, by Isaac Albéniz. realize it's a lot of short pieces. Sorry for too much clapping. Here is the piece called Guitar by Moskowski, Moritz Moskowski. And I'll close the classical part. I'll play a couple gospels at the end. It's getting late and rainy, so don't want to keep you too long. This is, well, Moskowski is not played too much anymore. He was very popular 100 or 120 years ago. A lot of the old school pianists like Vladimir Horowitz played Moskowski's pieces. Not so much now. Moskowski was sort of a salon composer. His music's light and bubbly, sort of like champagne, you know. And maybe nowadays a lot of classical folks only want to do the heavy stuff. So, but you know, music, a concert to me is like a meal, so you need to have a little dessert too. And this is like a nice chocolate mousse or something. But I love his music, it's brilliant. Moskowski. So he was Polish, lived in Berlin most of his life, but he wrote this Spanish-themed piece. It's less overtly flamenco-ish. It's less than the Malagueña I just played, but it has this quality, and it was his friend Pablo de Sarasate who said, you've got to adapt it for violin. I think maybe Sarasate arranged it himself for violin. And so normally if this piece is done, it's done on the violin. I'm playing the original piano piece because despite my obsession with the violin, as you can see, I've been too lazy to learn it, so I just play the piano piece. Guitar by Moskowski. Thank you. A couple gospel numbers I'll do. This is a very country gospel piece called The Great Speckled Bird. Roy Acuff sang it. Try to emulate his twanginess and see how it comes. because if classical's not your thing, I try to have something for everyone. Now I'm going to close with a famous old spiritual gospel mix, sort of Down by the Riverside. We need to think about that now because all these wars going on. Ain't gonna study war no more is a big part of this. So, see what I can do with it. Thinking of Mahalia Jackson and how she sang it, and so many greats who sang this. So, here we go. Alrighty, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. I think we'll close there. Thank you. Hello. Oh, I have some. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. Oh, I can play it for you. Yeah, I would. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll play it. Yeah, if you stay, Al. Oh yeah. Oh, well, that's gospel. But I understand it. Somewhat. Yeah, I've improvised that. So, like your. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I hope not. Thank you. Nice to be here. Yeah, tell Miss Hannah I'd love to come back. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
These North Jersey guys.
Oh yeah, are you from North Newark? Yeah. Oh, Newark. Okay, I'm from Bergen County. Very close. Wonderful. Well, us transplants, we're all coming here.
Yeah, sure.
The weather. Yeah, exactly. Except today. But,
Oh, yeah.
good to see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll have to have some. His work is a little winded, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Always
very much.
appreciate it. With me.
Always love to be here. Thanks for the mic support, the tech support. So.
We always enjoy
Oh,
it.
thank you. No.
I've got to work on that.
Oh, thank you.
I got to work on that.
Thank you very much. I'd love to come. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. I'd love to be here. I'll be back. Thank you. I retired. I used to teach a lot. I taught there for 5 years, and I taught at East Carolina University. But now I'm just performing more. So, and I love it. So, I have more time for practice. Thank you.
Come back.
I'd love to come back soon.
Tell
So.
Canada. Get you.
Oh, yeah. Canada. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's just.
Be safe.
Thank you very much. I love it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. We have a piano here, so.
I couldn't do that.
That's true. Well. Oh, thank you for coming. Thanks.